It happened when I was a child in the Lazaro Cardenas neighborhood on one of the oldest streets many years ago now. There were still several vacant lots there, just overgrown with weeds. One of them had a wooden shelter in the back, but no one lived there except a group of 5 dogs who took refuge there and survived thanks to what we neighbors gave them. But they also survived despite the neighbors because some hated them and taught them to fear us. Every time they saw them near their house, they threw stones at them and kicked them away. The dogs were wary, but at the same time, they were guardians. It was as if they already knew who we were, those of us who lived on the street. They watched over us. Even those who kicked them, even those they protected when they came in, homeless, came in. There were no burglaries, no assaults, and no car thefts. The 5 dogs didn't let anyone from outside wander around there. Then, a woman came to live in the rooms at the end of the street, where it ended, where there was no way out, the rooms that Doña Licha rented. I don't remember that woman's name, but she looked bad. She looked like a criminal, and her brother and his friends, who looked even worse, would come to visit her. They would walk down the street, heading towards Doña Licha's rooms, but while they snooped around the whole street, as if looking to see what they could steal. And yes, the thefts would begin to happen. One night we were all woken up by the barking of dogs. Who knows what they'd done, but they attacked one of those thugs. They knocked him down and covered him in bites. They left him in terrible shape, and the few neighbors who actually listened to us had to come out and pull them off. It was the first time in my life I'd ever seen so much blood. Despite that, despite everything being covered in bites and blood, we recognized him. He was one of the friends of that woman's brother who lived in the boarding house and was already stealing around there. They knew they were going to have a hard time. That mean woman from the boarding house started saying that her friend was just passing by, that he wasn't going to steal anything, that the dogs were wild, a danger to people. She called the pound, and they came for the 5 dogs. When my mom and the lady across the street went to rescue them and pay the fine so they could bring them back, no, this time, just as they arrived, they were taken straight to be euthanized. When my parents went to get them the next day, they were told they were gone. So far, it's a sad story, but I'm telling you this for a reason. That night, when they came back and gave us the news, they also went to tell the neighbors. That night, my parents took me to their room to watch movies until I fell asleep. But before that, I noticed they closed the windows and curtains, they closed the door, they closed everything. During the night, I woke up to a scream, a distant scream in the street. I remember that the first thing I thought was La Llorona, but my mom laughed and told me to go back to sleep. I asked her what it was, and she just repeated that I should go back to sleep. I insisted that I would have to get up early, and in fact, yes, at 5 a.m. We were already on our way to the Social Security office for an appointment we had with my doctor. I remember very well how the street looked different when I went outside that morning. All the streetlights were off, all the windows were closed, and the dogs in the yards were outside as if they had been left to sleep inside that night. When we got back, we noticed a lot of activity, patrol cars at the end of the street near the tenement. The bad woman, the one who called the dog pound, had died in the early hours of the morning. But the worst part was that she died of fright, of a heart attack right in front of her door. What people were saying on the street then was that this had happened to her for ordering someone killed. The witch's dogs. That's what they were called. You see, those little dogs I'd always known were the offspring of 2 dogs belonging to a woman who lived in the little wooden house in Salot Baltillo. A woman they called the witch. Before she died, she told the neighbors that no one should touch the dogs, that they didn't have to take care of them if they didn't want to, but that no one should touch them because she would come back. Of those 5 little dogs that died, 2 were her offspring, the ones left from the last litter of the original dogs. The other 3 were street dogs who had found refuge there and became part of the pack. Apparently, there was another incident with a small dog before. Apparently, the people on the street already knew that the threat wasn't just empty talk. But honestly, I don't know that story. A friend told me that he and his sister got up to look out when they heard the screams in the early morning, the same crying I heard, and that they got up secretly, hiding from their parents. They say they saw a woman who could barely walk, so hunched over she was practically on all fours, that she left the vacant lot crying and walked very slowly, step by step, to the end of the street. They say she was heading towards the tenements. From there, nobody knew what happened. Months later, A dog took refuge in the vacant lot, in that same vacant lot. There, she had her puppies. Shortly after, they started clearing the land because they were going to build, and my parents took one of the puppies. The neighbors kept the others, either as a final favor to the witch or perhaps out of fear of having done nothing wrong and falling under the curse. And I know perfectly well that this might sound like just a legend, but I'm writing to you with Rufino perched here on my lap. He's the grandson of the dog my parents kept from the last generation of dogs that took refuge there in that vacant lot. I still sometimes tell him, just to scold him, that he's the witch's last dog. This happened just last week. I'm still very nervous about it because I'm quite easily frightened by anything paranormal, and I don't think it's just my imagination and suggestion, because what I'm about to tell you has been seen from several perspectives. I work as a reporter for a large newspaper in my city, and recently we had to cover a story until quite late. My colleague and I returned late at night when almost no one was left in the newsroom. From the moment we arrived at the parking lot, the guards watched us very closely before letting us in. I thought it was strange because we were in the company car and because they already know us. My other colleague approached, and after we left the forms, we said goodbye to the sports guy and walked toward the office. The door, as always, took a few seconds to open. We walked down that long hallway to where we had to edit the information we were carrying. And that's how it all ended until the next day, when we finally found out what had happened that night. In the morning, another colleague approached me and said, "Hey, did you find out what happened last night?" "Oh no, what can I say? You missed it." But oh well, I let it go. Maybe the darkness of that night made it harder for them to recognize us or something. We parked near the guard booth, about 15 meters away. My coworker went inside to fill out the vehicle return form, and I stayed leaning against the hood of the car, looking at my phone. That's when I felt someone staring at me. I turned toward the booth, and the guard was looking at me with her eyes squinting, as if she wanted to recognize me. Again, it seemed strange to me. She already knew me pretty well, but she was looking at me as if she thought I was going to steal something or something. Just then, one of our sports teammates came over and started talking to me. While I was talking to him, I saw a girl come into the parking lot from the street. First out of the corner of my eye, then I turned to look at her. It struck me as odd because instead of heading left toward the offices, she started walking in the opposite direction, toward the darkest and most secluded part of the parking lot. "What's she up to?" I said. "They let anyone in here now," he replied. I told him I didn't know what he meant. He asked if the guards hadn't told me. I said no. And that's when he told me. The night before, when my friend and I arrived, the guards hesitated to let us in because they said there was a woman with us, a woman in the back seat. They tried to see who she was, but when they couldn't, they let us in. They thought it was probably another female colleague. When I was waiting for my friend, leaning against the hood, the guard noticed the girl get out with me when I took the gear backpack from the back seat. He said she stood next to me. The guard got out. She took a few steps toward me, trying to see who it was, but I couldn't recognize her. She said she was wearing a cap that hid her face, and all she could make out was her silhouette. Just her silhouette. Then my partner came out of the booth, approached me, and we headed toward the office entrance. The guards were watching intently through the cameras. They saw the three of us. They saw the girl with us. She walked over and waited with us as the door opened. We went inside. We headed to the end of that long hallway to edit, and the girl walked halfway down it. We kept going, and she stopped for a moment. She turned to her right toward a spiral staircase. After a moment, she moved forward and disappeared into them as she went up, out of the camera's field of view. By this point, the two guards knew something was very strange, but neither of them dared to go and investigate. To go up those newsroom stairs that led to the newsroom, they simply stayed in the guard booth. I'm sure they had just seen something paranormal. My colleague and I talked about how we hadn't noticed anything strange. Then I went to find my sports friend, the one I had talked to the night before. He hadn't noticed anything either. I told him that the only strange thing then had been that weird girl who came into the left and went into the darkness. But he asked me what it was. I reminded him. I told him that I had said that she was carrying that thing and that he had replied that they let anyone in now. But he looked at me like I was crazy and said that he had never said that. Convinced that I was mistaken, I went to the guards. I asked them to show me the security camera footage of my arrival the night before. And here comes the strangest part. What I experienced and what the guard saw was different from what can be seen there. In the recorded images, I'm waiting for my partner next to the car. My other sports partner approaches me. I never leaned against the hood to look at my phone. I never talked behind the car with my sports friend. No one else ever entered the parking lot. Then, my partner and I walked toward the office entrance and disappeared down the hallway until we reached where we were going to edit. Nothing else is visible. Absolutely nothing strange appears, except that both we and the guards know that what was recorded there didn't happen, at least not in that way. My city is violent. The car we arrived in, the one we arrived in with her, has to visit crime scenes every day. So I don't know. I think maybe she got in somewhere. Maybe trying to get away from the place where something bad happened to her. Maybe not knowing she's no longer alive, but she came in with us. She went up to the newsroom. Like I said, this just happened. I'm writing this story from Aguascalientes, Mexico. It might not be exactly paranormal, but it's an experience that deeply affected my family and me. I think it shows that sometimes evil doesn't manifest itself through ghosts or apparitions, but through people very close to us. It all started when my grandfather became seriously ill. Little by little, he stopped eating, and his body began to deteriorate until he was malnourished. My father and my uncles took turns caring for him each week, always keeping a watchful eye on him in December 2023 when my grandfather couldn't go on any longer and passed away. The whole family gathered to say goodbye, all heartbroken, all except for one person, the wife of one of my uncles, who didn't show up. She'd already had multiple conflicts with my uncles and my father over issues related to my grandparents' house. She lives on a part of the property that was divided years ago, but she always wanted to keep the whole thing. My uncles claim that this woman practices black magic, and that once, without anyone asking her, she said something very disturbing. First, her father, then her mother, and then her sister, referring to my grandfather, my grandmother, and my aunt with a disability. Sadly, everything was happening just as she said. 2 months after losing my grandfather, my grandmother also passed away. The strangest thing is that she presented the exact same symptoms as him. She stopped eating. Her body gradually weakened, as if she were shutting down. When we learned that my grandmother had passed away, my father and brother went to his house immediately. My father entered the room, sat down in the armchair at the foot of the bed, and immediately felt an inexplicable tiredness, as if something had suddenly drained his energy. He asked my brother to sit next to him to see if he felt the same, but it was a feeling only my father experienced. Days after the funeral, while they were cleaning my grandmother's room, my cousin's girlfriend found a strange bag hidden away. It contained black soil, dry twigs, and red thread. She was so frightened that she didn't touch it. Everyone began to suspect the same person, my uncle's wife, because she and her family had been taking care of my grandmother those days. My cousin's girlfriend cleaned the room with water, white vinegar, holy water, and soap, and threw all the water out into the street, symbolically sweeping it toward that woman's house as if to return any bad luck she might have sent. But it didn't end there. Days later, my cousins went to visit my grandparents' house. On their way back from the store, they saw this woman throw a black bag filled with dried lemons and dirt toward her father's truck. When my uncle noticed they were watching him, he quickly ran inside, and fear was inevitable. A short time later, my uncle's truck started breaking down constantly, one thing after another, as if it would never be fixed. He also said he felt exhausted and stressed, that his money just wouldn't stretch no matter how hard he tried to manage it. Finally, my parents decided to take me to a man who reads and detects energies or curses. As soon as my father entered the room, the man immediately said something to my mother. They want to get rid of this man. It's not because of another woman. It's a curse placed on him by someone very close to him. The man then gave them a physical description of the person. It was a perfect match for my uncle's wife. We were advised to wear a red bracelet with a St. Benedict medal and to have the house blessed, and we did so without hesitation. But perhaps the most painful thing was the death of my little dog, who had been with me since I was 6. One day, we just found her lying in the yard with blood in her mouth and around her as if she'd vomited blood. We didn't know what she died of, but my dad thought that maybe she absorbed something meant for him, as if she had protected him, as if she had sacrificed herself. That thought devastated us even more. Fortunately, Since then, we haven't had any more confrontations or strange incidents with this woman, but the fear and anguish she left us with, the pain of seeing our loved ones fall one by one, and the feeling of being attacked like that by someone so close is something that isn't easily forgotten. Unfortunately, we don't have a conclusion, but I'm sharing this because I hope this story helps others to be alert, not to be swayed by skepticism, and to act and protect themselves as soon as possible if they have any suspicions.